we go. Okay, we'll get started and feel free to jump in with questions along the way. So welcome everybody to tonight's Startup Grind Fireside Chat. We go beyond the founder origin stories and talk about real opportunities in front of us right now. Most are familiar with the classic startup journey. Someone quits their job, sketches an idea on a napkin, builds a pitch deck, and starts from zero. That's one path. But there's also another path, one that's often overlooked, even though it represents a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, buying an existing business and making it your own. Here's what most people don't realize. Over 10 trillion in business assets are expected to change hands in the US alone over the next decade due to retiring baby boomer business owners. And yet only a fraction of these businesses are being passed down. About 70% of businesses don't have a formal succession plan, and half of business owners don't even want their children to take over. That means hundreds of thousands of stable, profitable businesses will come up for sale, often quietly and often at prices well below what it would cost to start something similar from scratch. And here's the kicker, only about 30% of businesses listed for sale actually get bought and the rest disappear. So tonight we're spotlighting a different kind of founder journey, one that starts not in a garage but with an acquisition. Our guest Mike stepped into a business after the original founder passed away. And rather than just preserving what was there, he continued to transform it into something fresh and powerful, a true example of building on top of a legacy. This is about reinvention, opportunity, and one of the smartest plays in entrepreneurship that more people should be considering. So we'll start with some questions. So first off, I'll just let you introduce yourself, just give a quick introduction, overview of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so my name's Michael Kossuth. I'm a physical therapist. I own Restoration Physical Therapy, a little outpatient clinic in Grapevine, Texas. I did my undergraduate, majored in biology at UNT up in Denton, and then got my doctorate in physical therapy from UT Southwestern down in Dallas, and then got my fellowship in manual therapy through the North American Academy of Manual Physical Therapists.
So what inspired you to go into physical therapy?
Yeah, so was not on my radar at the time. I was thinking I was going to go into orthodontia.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I worked for one for about 2 years.
Okay, wow.
Realized rather quickly I didn't want to be in somebody's mouth for the rest of my life. But always been a math and science guy, knew I wanted to do something medical. And Dave, the old owner of Restoration, actually came up to me after a basketball game and said he heard I was thinking about doing something in the medical field and said I should come hang out and see what physical therapy was about. So I went after school for 3 days, 1 week, and then at the end of the third day, he offered me a job and never left. So quickly fell in love with that aspect of medicine, not having to spend 2-3 minutes with a person and just kind of bouncing from place to place, and actually being able to take a little bit more time and develop a relationship with somebody and make an impact on their life by improving their function and taking away their pain. I quickly decided that's what I wanted to do.
Fabulous. So you mentioned a little bit about how you met Dave Bloom. So was it just at basketball?
Yeah. So his son also played on the same team I did.
Oh, nice. I
He was
didn't
on
know
the
that.
he was on the he was a couple years younger than me, so he
Yeah.
was on the JV team when I was playing.
Okay.
But it was just one of those where we both had back-to-back games, and
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure how he found out that I was thinking medical, but
Yeah.
it was a complete God thing for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So go ahead and mention what happened to Dave Bloom and how did that turn into the opportunity to own the business?
Yeah. So Dave ended up getting skin cancer, melanoma. He fought it for a good while, but ended up passing away December in 2012. So after that, his wife took over the business and was more on the hands-off side. The office manager was the one that handled the day-to-day operations and actually running it. So by the time I graduated in December 2014, they were both ready to have somebody else come in and have a succession plan put in place.
And what made you say yes to buying it?
Good question.
Yeah.
That was a lot. Dave was a mentor to me. He was incredible. I would do anything for him and his family. So something that I could do to make sure his legacy continued, and then also it was a fantastic business opportunity. It was something that if I was able to get things running smoothly, it turned out to be a wonderful thing for me and my family.
Nice. So, what was your emotional response of walking into a business with a history that somebody else built versus something that you built yourself from scratch?
Yeah, it was definitely um, a little daunting going in as the young guy that's taking over, especially when you have a lot of people that had been there for so long that were, you know, huge pillars in the reason that clinic thrived and did as well as it did. So,
What were some of the biggest challenges that you came across? And now looking backwards, hindsight is always 2020. What would you do something different?
um, good question. Really, I was very much focused on the clinical aspect for the first, oh gosh, probably 6 7 years into starting, where the office manager did a great job handling the business side, and the biggest void was um, the clinic side. So I poured myself into as many continuing education courses as I could find and really made that my primary focus, where taking a step back, thinking, okay, you know what? I probably should have been doing some business stuff along the way and not just praying it all worked out in the end as long as my clinical skills got good enough. So marrying the two and probably spending a little bit more time uh, diving into the business sooner would have been better, I would say.
And I definitely see that in a lot of the entrepreneurial space. There's people that are very talented and may not have the business acumen. So it's nice to develop the balance of the two.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely do what you're good at. And,
Right.
You're in it for a specific reason. You're in it to help people and make people better and make an impact from a clinical side. But also, it is a business, and then you want to make sure everybody has food on the table at the end of the day.
Yes,
So,
exactly. A little bit of pressure.
exactly.
So, what kind of shape was the business in when you took over, and was there anything that surprised you?
It was on a downward trend. Dave passed in December 2012, and then I graduated and came on board. And I graduated December 2014 and came on board in January 2015. So, in the course of those 2 years,
Taking a hit.
yeah, the office manager did a good job, but she did work primarily from home and not having an owner on site also. It was definitely, the weight was shouldered by a couple of staff therapists that kept the thing going and alive, but it was definitely needing some help and needing somebody to step in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in regards to making it your own, was there pressure to keep things exactly the way that they were? And how did you balance, the legacy versus the things that you wanted to do?
Yeah. So definitely people are resistant to change.
Yes.
It makes people uncomfortable for sure.
Right.
Especially when people have been doing it one way for an extremely long time. Having a young kid come in and say, hang on, what about this? Not always accepted. And there was definitely some resistance. But I definitely think balancing the way things were versus creating innovation. Initially, it was just putting my head down and establishing myself as a good clinician and somebody that was there to work and be a team player and show them that I was ready to jump in and be a part of a team as opposed to a dictator. And when you kind of come at it with a collaborative approach, it's not people butting heads and being at odds with each other. It's people trying to figure out a more efficient way or coming up with a solution to a problem.
How would you describe your initial leadership style versus now? So, was it a top-down approach where you were coming in, you have all these ideas, you wanted to make a difference and get the business up and running a bit more? Or was you more, you talked about collaboration, which is sort of the servant leadership approach. With like initially, what kind of approach you think that you think you took?
Yeah. So definitely there were some pieces in the office that really made it successful. So it was definitely a group approach. It was one of those where there were some key players where we came to a conclusion, and then between the group of us, we made sure it was implemented accordingly. So um, it was more of coming to that conclusion and getting the implementation to get started and get that ball rolling, which I'm a little bit better at now than I was 10 years ago. Uh, my wife used to call it putting human in my emails. Um, I get very, very factual. So it's, a bullet point, problem, problem, potential solution, potential solution. She's like, no, 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 this is a human being. You can't just go and state it like this. You've got to add some. So I'd let her fluff up my emails before I would send it. So I've definitely grown in that aspect over the years.
How important do you think that your passion for the field itself is that to managing the company overall? Because it might not be the case for all founders, because they might be looking towards a company that they're more interested in managing the business as being fully invested in the actual ongoing of the company.
Yeah, no, and definitely two ways of going about things for sure. I think that's the only reason I was successful was because I cared about the product, if you will. The better clinicians you have, the better outcomes you get, and patients can um, recover faster and get back to what they want to do. So it definitely it's not necessarily selling a product; it's giving a treatment for the betterment of that individual. So uh, if that's the whole purpose, if my focus was just on the business aspect of things, I don't think that would have been received and probably would have been less likely to be successful. Um, so, yeah.
Right. What was one of the big changes or improvements that you made when you first stepped in? Was there anything that you made a big change on, or was it mainly just trying to keep stability as you were growing it?
Yeah, it was one of those where I think everybody was um, tired when I came on. They'd shouldered a weight for a long time, and having somebody else to help come alongside and take that load, and um, they're it made it to where we all were having fun. We would get together on Saturday mornings and would do a workout together. We would, start to make it a little bit more of a team bonding family unit as opposed to getting your job done and going home. So I think that aspect was huge in getting the ship headed in the right direction by everybody wanting to contribute because we all wanted to help each other out in one way or another.
Right. So did clients or employees push back at all, or was there any, anything interesting or hard that you had to navigate, especially with Dave passing?
Yeah, definitely resistance in certain areas that you needed to um, work through. Where the clinical side was definitely what I was good at, and I did not have a business background by any means. So relied on people smarter than me to handle that aspect of it, but also having my own ideas and my own thoughts that I wanted to add to and move things to make it grow. Where when you're doing something one way for a long period of time,
Yes.
making a shift definitely came with some obstacles.
Yeah.
I think it really was me establishing that I'm here for the patients, I'm here for the community, I'm here for the team, is what kind of softened those walls to where it became a little bit easier to broach certain business decisions and maneuvering accordingly.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk a little bit about just the logistics of purchasing a business. The legal, financial, operational. Like, how did that work as far as working with Dave's widow and starting to buy into the business?
Yeah, it was structured around what his family's needs were. Um, it took 10 years to finish that process, and the end date, the complete buyout happened after her youngest graduated from college. So it was one of those where it was a slow process that I didn't have any money. So having that opportunity to
Right.
gradually pay into it over a period of
Yes.
time was definitely great for both parties.
Yeah, that definitely worked out well. And congratulations on
Yeah.
the full ownership. I
Thank
know
you.
that's been a recent thing.
Yeah.
So that, and I think that speaks to the grind and the, entrepreneurial spirit is to be able to be willing to put in that time so that you can see the payoff of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you could give some advice to somebody that was thinking about acquiring a business instead of starting one, what would you tell them are the pros and cons of doing that versus starting their own from scratch?
Yeah, definitely some added responsibility. With a already existing company, there's already employee expenses. There's um, people who are relying on that business to be profitable so they can collect a paycheck, to put food on the table for their families. So having that added weight, definitely make sure you put the extra work in to make sure it's successful.
Yeah.
And coming into an already functional entity that has its own rhythms, its own quirks. You have different people contributing different things to that environment, and figuring out where you fit in as a piece to that puzzle that's already in existence, and trying to figure out how to make it better as opposed to starting something on your own.
So what is, when you came into the business, there was already a team, employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the saying goes that 80% of the business is people management, right?
Right.
Did you go about, understanding each employee is unique and their needs and their way of working, and how did that perspective change, in managing people over a period of time?
So my situation was rather unique. I worked there for a little over 4 years prior to going off to PT school, and then came back with that core unit still there. So it was definitely an interesting transition to the high school, college kid working as a technician to lead therapist and partner owner, right? So I already had relationships established. Now, kind of turning it to a from a subordinate to a owner was a challenge for some, and then others, it wasn't a challenge at all. So definitely already having those relationships established where they knew who I was and um, already knew my work ethic, my integrity. It made it a whole lot easier to maneuver just because we already had that relationship established, and the core that was there was the reason it was successful and still is for sure.
Nice. So, were there any unexpected hurdles or unexpected advantages when you acquired the business?
Um, Unexpected hurdles or advantages. So I'd say the hurdles going out of PT school, physical therapy school, you're 100% clinically minded, where your hurdles are coming up with the correct diagnosis and how to treat them.
Yes.
Where dealing with the interpersonal dynamics and making sure everybody's doing their job and trying to guide people the right direction who might need to turn a little bit to the right. That aspect of things definitely was more of a challenge than I thought it was going to be for sure. As far as advantages, it wasn't all on me by any stretch of the imagination. There was people that wanted it to be successful and worked hard and were ready for another teammate to jump in and start going. So it definitely had that as a huge advantage of people that wanted to be sure Dave's legacy continued, and they were there through that whole process. So that was a huge advantage for it.
So just to add to that question,
Yes.
in the 10 years journey, what has been the biggest challenges that you have come across from a business standpoint that you had to overcome?
Yeah. So one of the problems that I had, especially in the early stages, was trying to build a bigger moat from a referral source standpoint. So in the state of Texas, you can see a patient off the street for 10 to 15 business days before needing a prescription from a physician. So the physician is the gatekeeper, if you will, to patients coming into your doors. So going out and developing relationships with physicians and developing that relationship to where they trust you with their patients was challenging for sure. Getting FaceTime and getting your clinic out there and getting your name out there was probably the hardest obstacle out of the gate.
How long did it take to overcome that?
It was a couple years. I've never been great at marketing. You go and you cold call and you chit chat with the person at the front desk, and then you walk away and go, I bet you they just threw that handout straight in the trash can and didn't even go to the doctor.
Right.
So the whole sitting there and chit chatting with somebody and making that a successful encounter was definitely not my strength. My strength was the clinical side. So I ended up using that, where I would do rounds or go and shadow a physician while they did their examinations on their patients, and getting to have the clinical conversation of, oh, I saw you did this test. Are you thinking X, Y, and Z? What did you see on the MRI? Did you find this? And throwing in some intelligent questions to make them go, oh, wait a second, he knows what he's talking about. That was how I was able to get their attention to where they wanted to send patients our direction.
Is there anything that you would recommend to somebody that's coming into a business in that arena as far as like marketing? Would you have brought on somebody, or would you have wanted to have some of that in school or something that would have helped with that?
Yeah, definitely played it to my strengths. Having somebody else that had a different strength and
Right.
came at it from a different direction might have made it easier for sure. as far as getting that in school. They did have, business development, how to,
Right.
operate an outpatient clinic,
Yeah.
but it was definitely very bare bones,
Yeah.
rudimentary, where it's not individualized to a specific
Yeah.
clinic. So it was a structure, but it didn't answer all the inner workings, all the questions for sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, do you feel like a founder even though you didn't start it from scratch? And how is the mindset around now that you have the full ownership? How do you navigate that mindset of being kind of the owner?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I feel like a founder.
Right.
I feel like I'm continuing a great man's legacy of something that he built, and have added my flavor to it and kind of morphed it into my own. But his core values, the reason that clinic got established, is the same today as it was when he started it. And it's definitely a group effort. There's no way I could have done it by myself. It was multiple people along the way helping in one capacity or another to make it successful, and they still do, because I still have no idea what I'm doing 10 years later. I just hope I'm better than I am last year compared to this
I
year.
think we all feel that way.
So if you were to go into a new venture, would you prefer acquiring a business or starting something like that?
That's a tough question to answer just because I've never started anything up. Now, having an existing referral source, having equipment already available, I mean, there were definitely some advantages to acquiring a business that made certain things easier. Now, the startup aspect, as long as you already have a relationship with people in that area, I think could be successful also, but I can't really speak to that without having to have grinded through that in the past.
Sure.
I'm interested in how you sort of identify what your key strengths were, because I think that sort of drove the way you could implement your own ideas and add them to what was already there.
Yeah, definitely. Identifying my key strengths. I've always been a decent teacher, especially from the educational side of things. It's my first business talk.
Yes.
It's always been
Right.
teaching the clinical aspect.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was definitely my gifting and my bias and the thing that I enjoyed. And so that was the aspect that I definitely wanted developed out of the gate. So that's the direction that I took it, and it worked well because there were other players that made things work for me as I was learning one side and kind of gradually working my way through to getting a full understanding of the business.
So, what would you think that if Dave could see you now, is there things that you would think that he would be proud of, or things that he would, what do you think he would think 10 years later?
I will ask him one day.
I know. I know. I think he would be proud of you.
I hope so.
I believe that.
Definitely want to continue what he already established. He was such a gifted man. I mean, people still talk about him over a decade after he passed. And following up, gosh, there was a patient who came in not that long ago who said, "Oh yeah, no, I saw Dave for my knee pain, and never met the guy. He did a couple of things, and he said, oh, I can fix that." And so then all of a sudden he closed his eyes and started breathing heavy and moved my leg in a couple of different ways. And then he said, "Okay, you're good. Get on up. I'll show you a couple exercises." And do I have to come back? And he goes, "I was amazed the pain went away. And I was fine." He goes, "Oh, no, it's fixed. You're fine." Well, I'm not Dave and I'm not Jesus, so we'll give it our best go and see what happens.
Right.
So definitely tough to follow after that.
Yeah.
So doing the best I can, and
For sure.
hope he's proud of that.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. So, as you think about the future, and especially, recently being the full owner,
Yeah.
what are some of the things that you're doing to make it truly yours? And what are some of the things that you're looking forward to doing going forward?
Yeah. The most recent thing I've been looking at is just advantages of being a business owner and ways to maneuver funds to make things a little bit more successful. So, example, my wife has taken over the scheduling for
Nice.
techs, and she's been able to start incorporating herself into the business a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, being able to pay into retirement accounts for her.
Right.
My kids help clean the office on the weekends, and so that money that they make, that they just think they're going to dad's office to clean,
Right.
because that's what they're supposed to do,
Right.
is actually getting funneled into a 529 and a Roth IRA for them. So figuring out ways to be a little bit more cost effective with
Yes.
the way money is distributed.
Right. Yeah.
Things like using certain business cards to
Sure.
accumulate travel points, or some really good returns on cash back for certain cards, and what is something that we can pay off at the end of the month that we can put through this versus this. So just trying to be a little bit more calculated with how things are run.
On the business side. Yeah.
Would you ever consider at any point, in the future, selling the business?
That's not something I've entertained really. I love that clinic. I love where I'm at and what I'm doing. I've always kind of seen myself starting and ending there. Now, if that changes, I'm open-handed with it, but that's not really something I've thought about at this point anyway.
Yeah. And how are you bringing some innovation, such as like the electronic medical records and things like that? And what are you kind of seeing in the field?
Goodness, that was a bear for sure. We use dictation service for a lot of our documentation, from like initial evaluation, reevaluation, progress notes, but we were still handwriting daily notes, and so we had paper charts, and every 3 or 4 years I would do meetings with probably a half dozen different electronic medical record companies, and they've gotten better over the last decade for sure, and we finally made that leap beginning of 2024, and that was a challenging experience. Yes. For sure, for everybody, just because you're so used to operating in that way, where it definitely made things a whole lot more efficient in a lot of ways, but figuring out how to navigate that new software, and from a different scheduling to different documentation, different billing, it is a good thing now.
Yes, a challenge in the time, right?
There was about 6 months where I almost pulled my hair out, but other than that, it was So definitely a challenge, but grateful we made that leap when we did.
Awesome. Yeah. So as we wrap up, is there any final things that you would recommend to people as they're looking at acquiring a business, or just in the learning process of growing a business?
Yeah. Definitely not for the faint of heart.
Right.
It's
yes.
a lot of it's a lot of hours, a lot of weekends, making sure it's successful. It's one of those where you need to make sure key players are on board. If my wife wasn't behind it, it would have failed a very, very long time ago. Yes. And then having partners working together. There's people in the clinic that are there for the right reasons and have integrity and want to see it thrive and have a great work ethic. And having those people there is the only reason it survives. You can only work so many hours, and having other people with the same values and work ethic is huge because you can only do so much.
What is the biggest advice or lesson that you know, give to future entrepreneurs, whether they're acquiring or starting a business? What is the biggest advice?
It was a lot more relational than I thought it would be. You get the job done. Here's a task. This is what I need to do. I'm going to accomplish it. Or here's a patient. I need to figure out what needs to happen based on what the diagnosis is. And you think of it as task, work complete, and bring it on again. Where there's more interpersonal relationship side of things than I really thought there would be, especially when you have multiple employees and having to work to create an environment that is productive and a environment that is enjoyable for employees to work in and enjoyable for patients to receive care. So it's definitely a side of it that I hadn't even had on my radar when I jumped into the deep end.
How did you, manage work-life balance and being an entrepreneur, uplifting the business and having a family, as you mentioned about long hours in the weekend? How did you balance that?
Yeah, a lot of sacrifices were made. Um, Grateful for several years. We lived like 2 minutes from the office. So, especially when we just had one kiddo, my wife would just come on up and hang out. And, so I'd get to see my son and my wife, throughout the workday for like an hour or two. And she would just kind of, be there and talking to people and hanging out. And honestly, my son didn't really care who was holding him. And there were people who were just like, oh man, that's a fat baby with some major rolls. Give it to me. So he just kind of got passed around. There were times, especially when I was working on my fellowship, that was a lot of weekends gone. The kids were young at that point, and so that was definitely the time to get that task done. But that put a lot on my wife to manage and run things at home and make sure the time that I had at home was good quality family time, if you will.
Where do you see yourself in the future? How would you want to scale it up? Other than the revenue piece of it, would you want to open up more locations, move out of state, whatever it may be? What is like the 10, 20-year roadmap?
Sure. So definitely kind of depends on the environment, the health of things over the next 10, 20 years. Never know what's going to hit. So looked into potentially buying a commercial building and letting that be the next venture, versus opening up another location that maybe 20-25% of the patients that are currently coming to that location, it might be more convenient for them to go there, and getting a second location going. So it really definitely kind of depends on what opportunities arise, and taking advantage of those opportunities when they come.
I think this last question, I think kind of touched on the IT and
Sure.
technology aspect of things. With the uprising of AI and other things going on, how do you see that affecting the healthcare industry, especially?
I've had several conversations with a couple of different professionals about that. They definitely have the AI portion of documentation where you are recording yourself doing the evaluation on a patient, and AI pumps all of it in and gets all that information in there for you and puts it in this concise manner. And it's kind of cool. Definitely in the elementary stages, as far as AI taking over my particular aspect of medicine. I don't think so, just because it's so hands-on.
Right.
I was talking to a dermatologist who said he's so grateful he's towards the end of his career because there are apps out there now that you can take a picture of something on the skin and it's got 80% accuracy of coming up with, hey, we should get this thing biopsied. So he goes, it's not out of the realm of possibility to, think your primary care physician, when you go for your annual physical, is just going to wave his wand, his phone
Right.
up and down your body and then decide, okay, this actually needs to go get biopsied. Now you need to go to the dermatologist. And, now you're not going to the dermatologist every year for your checkup. Your PCP is taking care of it for you and then funneling a small amount of those people to him. So, it's definitely going to make its impact in the medical world. How much it's going to impact my specific aspect, yet to be determined.
All right.
I'm curious how your plan is moving forward to connect with new physicians and scale in that direction.
That normally is from patients are your best marketers. If they believe in what you do and believe you're better than the 3 other clinics that are a rock throw from your office, some of them are very vocal about that to their physician. And then you get a couple of patients from them, and if they have good experiences, and then they start to change how they refer. So it's definitely patients are a big factor in that. Some of my other better referral sources are physicians that have come in and then were treated and had a good experience and said, oh, okay, this is actually a better place than what I've been referring to in the past. So that's one way that we try to establish relationships with doctors, is patients go back and tell them, and then you try to initiate contact and develop a relationship.
All right. Any final questions before we wrap up the fireside chat? All right.
Awesome.
Thank you so very much.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.